Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to everyone that's attending. I think we've got around 50 people attending from a range of non-profits today, so we appreciate you being part of the conversation. So the idea for this webinar is to be conversational between all of the speakers. So we've got a Q&A section at the end if you post your questions in the chat, and we'll make sure that we cover them for you. We really aim to ensure that this session is practical AI insight, not just AI hype. So hopefully we achieve that for you today. So it's nice to meet everyone. I'm Josh, Business Development Manager for Nonprofits at Transparity. So the idea behind this event is that it was born out of the Microsoft Elevate event in London just a few months ago, and followed by the Global Nonprofit Leader Summit in Seattle recently as well, where we gained insight from Microsoft and we've combined that with our own AI research. So there's been a common theme with our customers wanting to move past experimentation and into delivery at scale. So hopefully this helps you all. And we'll be joined by Alzheimer's Society today. So thank you specifically to Aidan for joining us. I think Alzheimer's specifically have been the first charity that I've seen that have embraced this journey to be an early frontier driven organization. So the work is exciting for me personally because it's mission led, it's impactful, and it's not just purely about time savings. It's about how we accelerate that mission. So we'll be getting into that in a second. So I'll quickly cover the agenda for you. I'll be covering Transparity segment initially, covering the headlines from Microsoft's Frontier Playbook, and also some headlines from Transparity's own AI research. Derek from Microsoft will then be giving a view from Microsoft's own kind of challenges and opportunities in the industry. So Derek, if you wanted to give a quick introduction to yourself as well, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Josh. My name's Derek O'Donnell. I manage the Azure business in EMEA on behalf of Microsoft Elevate. I've been with the Elevate business since about 2021 and with Microsoft since about 2013. Delighted to be here.
Perfect. Thanks, Derek. And yeah, we'll be moving then on to Aidan Foreman at Alzheimer's Society, CTO there, to give his perspective, one, as an IT leader within a charity, but two, also as a CTO for anyone that's kind of in or stepping into that role in the near future. So Aidan, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. No worries, Josh. Thanks for that. So yeah, hi there, everyone. My name is Aidan Foreman. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at the Alzheimer's Society. Been with the organisation for just over a year now, or just under a year, actually, I should say. But I've been in the non-profit sector for my whole career. So just really nice to be involved with the Alzheimer's Society. I'm really happy to share our perspectives today. Back over to you, Josh.
Perfect. Rami is then going to be talking through how we're approaching this project that we've been working on with the Alzheimer's Society, but also customers more broadly to approach strategic AI implementation at scale. So Rami, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Cheers, Josh. I'm Rami. I'm the Practice Group Director for AI at Transparity, working with Transparity alongside partnership with Microsoft for the last 8 years. My background, without giving away my age too much, is about 22 years in data, and then in the last 2.5 years moving into AI proficiently. Over to you, Josh.
Nice one, Rami. I think everyone will be doing the maths on that in a second, so that's perfect. And then once Rami has got everyone all excited about the art of the possible around AI, we've also brought Nick into the fold. So Nick is our governance and compliance consultant at Transparity. Nick, over to you.
Yeah, I'm GRC consultant. So obviously I'm here to help organizations ensure the guardrails are in place and the compliance is there to adopt AI at scale without the risk.
Perfect. And just at the end there, we've got a bit of a view from Microsoft in terms of the top functional areas that they're seeing in terms of most popular use cases globally. So we'll give a view on that, as well as saving lots of time for Q&A at the end. So at the end, feel free to take yourselves off mute. We're happy to have a conversation, answer any questions live, or as I say, pop those questions in the chat as we go, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end as well. So some of you may be familiar with Transparity, some of you may not. So Transparity are a pure play Microsoft partner in the UK. So obviously Microsoft are responsible for creating all of this technology globally, and they need partners to come and implement it, just given the scale that they're working at. So we're about 400 people now, all UK based. And a large proportion of our customers are actually non-profits. We're now working with around 100 non-profits in the UK. We've been around for about 10 years. Over that time, we've delivered nearly 3,000 projects, and most commonly, kind of recently across the the AI landscape, data, purview, etc. So very much aligns to the Microsoft Frontier way of working now. We only deliver Microsoft solutions, so somewhat specialist in this area. Microsoft recently brought out what they call their Frontier accreditation. So Transparency were the first partner in the UK to achieve that accreditation, and it just means that we're best in class in terms of capability to be able to take an organization through this journey. Sorry. And when it comes to nonprofit expertise, we've also just been awarded Microsoft's Global Nonprofit Partner of the Year. So there's thousands of submissions that go into those awards nominations, and we were the one globally. So super proud of that. But also something that's not in this screen is we were awarded Best Technology Partner by Charities IT Leaders recently. So we were super proud of that one because it means that that's voted for by the charity. So hopefully we're a good bunch of people to work alongside as well. So Microsoft's Frontier Playbook, we'll send a copy of this round to you all afterwards. It's publicly available to you all, but really this is Microsoft's recent view on how to take an organization or your organization through this journey. So the foundational layer, most organizations are starting with a human plus assistant. So you'll all be familiar with Copilot. So every employee has an AI assistant that helps them work better and faster. Then we move into expansion. So this is the ability for human and agent teams, basically. So people are able to build their own agents to act as digital labor and really kind of act out specific tasks with human direction. Then we move into phase 3. So this is when we're becoming a truly kind of frontier organization. And this is potentially a multi-year transformation for organizations. And this is where humans are setting a direction and agents then run the entire business process and workflow. And so that's the organization, that's the kind of transformation that we're taking organizations through now. The stat at the bottom just shows that really confidence is high in terms of the capability that this is going to bring to organizations, but maturity still lags in this area. And so there's lots of different components that we need to look at when we're thinking about Frontier. Most people are at the bottom left. We're thinking about technology. We are already establishing secure, compliant, AI-ready technical foundations, and I think we do that and think about that quite well. And so we can support you through that kind of transformation as well. But really, if we want this to be a success, we need to be thinking about things like the operating model. So laying the leadership foundations, making sure that we've got the right roles in place within the organization. And then when it comes to the workforce itself, it's not just about giving them the tools, it's about ensuring that they've got that AI literacy. It's about ensuring that they trust in those technologies. And it's really about ensuring, as we mentioned previously, that AI is augmenting those teams to enable them to work better. And so Transparency have done our own research. This is very recent. We surveyed around 500 business and IT leaders from across the UK, from a range of different industries, including various different sub-industries within non-profits. And the key findings really were that board level prioritization and budget allocation is there, it's real. So the momentum is there, but execution seems to be the gap. So most AI is still in pilots and in isolated teams. And really we want to kind of bring this together, and we're calling this the AI disconnect. So 3 main challenges. Firstly, AI is not connected to business strategy. So if someone's buying a tool, they're delivering some good work, but it's not aligned to the business strategy. Second is that there's a growing risk of shadow AI. And third is that, as we mentioned, it's slow to go from pilot to production. If we want to go through that frontier transformation, we don't want that taking years and years. We want to be building on the quick wins right now. And so the result really is just paralysis. There's too many tools, there's too much change, and organizations really are just unclear on where to start. So hopefully we can help with that today. The key message really is that we need to implement a structure for all of this. It's not built there to kind of slow you down. It enables safe speed. And successful organizations so far are taking a phased sprint-based approach, and that's what we'll talk you through. So common traits really that you can see on the left here of successful AI adoption have been strong executive sponsorship, a clear AI policy, and change management to support that, all aligned to business strategy and underpinned by secure, trusted foundations. And I think importantly for charities at this stage as well, responsible and ethical AI must be designed in from day one to ensure that it's delivered at a safe speed. So, Derek, with all of that from a transparency perspective, with our own kind of AI research, do you want to give a bit of a view from Microsoft's perspective?
Sure. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, before we, I suppose, get into that, I suppose what I wanted to just do is just spend a moment on Microsoft Elevate, particularly for anyone who may not necessarily be familiar with the rebrand. So you might know us from different names, Microsoft Philanthropies or Tech for Social Impact, for example. Elevate essentially brings together our technology, donations, sales, and skilling investments for nonprofits, NGOs, K-12 education, and community institutions into a single focused organization. At the center of all of that, let me just take control, Josh, and I'll go on to the first slide here, which I forgot to do. Let me know when you can see that.
Yeah, you got it now.
Perfect. And at the center of everything we do are the people and the organizations that we're serving. The nonprofit industry is the focus of today's discussion, but we have a broader remit in our organization to strengthen education and workforce, along with social impact systems globally. The intent is very simple. It's to ensure organizations delivering social impact can benefit from the same cloud and AI innovation as any other sector, responsibly, affordably, and with the right supports around skills and governance. Elevate builds on decades of that work, on decades of work that we've done with nonprofits, but it tightens the focus on AI, not just the technology, but the human and the organizational readiness needed to use it well. And I suppose that brings us to why this conversation matters so much right now. Nonprofits are facing rising demand, increasing expectations around accountability and transparency, and there's continued pressure on funding and capacity. At the same time, AI has reached a point of maturity where it's genuinely accessible, not just to large enterprises, but to mission-driven organizations of all sizes. This is not about technology for technology's sake. It's about giving time back to people, improving insights, and extending impact. So what are we seeing in the market right now? It's really encouraging, to be honest with you. We asked IDC to run a survey in the past couple of months across 500 nonprofit organizations, again across the UK, US, Brazil, and Australia. And the headline finding is very positive. Over 75% of nonprofits are already using some form of AI today. That tells us experimentation is already mainstream. AI is no longer speculative in the sector. Agentic AI, those systems that can orchestrate tasks and workflows, is a little bit earlier with about 10% deployed today, but that's exactly what we'd expect to see at this stage. What's really interesting is that adoption correlates far more with organizational size than mission type. Complexity, number of staff, location, systems, that they all drive maturity far more than the cause area. And while confidence is growing, learning appetite is still very strong. Nearly 60% of organizations want more general AI education around benefits, use cases, and guardrails. So when we think about where organizations seeing benefits and value today and what it is that they want to see from AI, the drivers are very practical. Productivity through workflow automation is number one. Freeing teams from manual repetitive tasks. It tends to be one of the easier and less risky areas in which you can apply AI technology today. Better insight and analysis comes next, particularly unlocking value from siloed data and strengthening reporting to boards and public stakeholders. Across functional areas within an organization, we're seeing a very clear pattern. This is an interesting one for me because it's different from what we would have seen previously. Finance and IT are leading, clear return on investment and control. Operations follow because they tend to have very structured processes that suit early AI adoption. Fundraising and marketing are actively experimented, and I think it's fair to say we're starting to see some early gains in engagement and segmentation. And then programs and HR are starting to show real strong interest, but they often need probably clearer impact pathways and understanding of use cases and scenarios that are being adopted by other organizations. So this This aligns closely to the quadrant model that IDC uses: activate, educate, invest, and cultivate, which helps organizations prioritize where to start in terms of this journey. Agentic AI is where the next wave of opportunity sits. Those systems that can orchestrate tasks and workflows. Adoption today is, it's probably fair to say, very deliberate, and I would view that as being a strength, not necessarily a weakness. I'd probably describe it as more augmentation centered than autonomous centered currently in the industry. Momentum tends to be strongest in operational and data-centric areas like IT, finance, reporting, anywhere that's doing a lot of forecasting and process orchestration. But almost universally, nonprofits are starting to position agentic AI as augmentation, definitely not autonomy. Systems that are assisting and coordinating with humans firmly in control to manage quality, control, and the output. That reflects a strong focus on trust, governance, accountability, which is exactly what's needed when serving communities and vulnerable populations. So how do we think about enabling confidence around AI adoption? How do we think about supporting the industry a little bit more going on from this point forward? So we're making a number of motions, or putting a number of structures and motions into place. Over the next 5 years, we'll be investing probably about $4 billion into the industry in terms of software and services to support the adoption of AI. But that in itself is not enough. Skilling is a key component of this to enable people to understand how to use it correctly. So our intent as well is to potentially look at skilling about 20 million people over the next 2 years. That's a massive undertaking for us as an organization. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to do it both direct and indirect. And one of the programs that we're putting in place that we announced in the last couple of weeks is the Microsoft Elevate for Changemakers initiative. And this is where Microsoft and our partner ecosystem really come into play. The IDC data shows nearly half of nonprofits prefer partner-led approaches to AI adoption, particularly smaller and mid-sized organizations. The feedback that we've gotten is that most organizations want concrete benefit examples. About 63% of organizations have given us that feedback. 53% of organizations are really seeking sort of peer use cases, so they're very keen to understand who else in the industry like them or are already adopting and using it, and what findings have they already got. And that reflects what we're hearing every day. Nonprofits don't want just raw tools, they want guided journeys. Microsoft provides a secure, governed AI platform. Partners like Transparency bring that sector experience, implementation experience, and hands-on support, helping all organizations of any size move from ideas to outcomes with confidence. And together, that combination helps organizations start small, prove value, and scale responsibly. So, as I mentioned, the Changemakers program, this was launched in the last couple of weeks by Justin Spellhog, who's the president of Microsoft Elevate. And when launching it, his own language was, the program is designed to empower those at the forefront of social challenges to confidently lead AI adoption in ways that reflect their missions and the communities they serve. And I think that sums up the intent behind this really well. Changemakers is designed specifically to help nonprofits move from curiosity to confident action. It combines role-based AI skills, peer learning, and expert implementation support, all grounded in real nonprofit scenarios. It aligns perfectly with what the data tells us: incremental adoption, strong governance, and building literacy alongside technology. So one of the call to actions that I have today is simple: engage with the learning. The accreditation here is between Microsoft, LinkedIn, and NetHope, and I've actually done it myself in the last couple of days, and it's really a worthwhile exercise to take. Engage with the learning, start where confidence is highest, and leverage platforms and partners. You don't need to do this alone. And through Microsoft Elevate and partners like Transparency, there's a clear supported path from experimentation to meaningful impact, and we'd love to be part of that journey. So that's me, Josh. I'm handing over to Aidan now, yeah?
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, Aidan, if you wanted to give a bit of a view from your perspective, from being, within a large charity in the UK, that'd be awesome, please.
No problem. Great stuff. Let's just move those slides along. I'm just taking control. Brilliant. So hopefully that's showing okay. So I think Derek covered some really interesting points there, and I guess I'm just going to dive a little bit deeper into thinking about this, why AI matters now for charities. As I mentioned at the start, I've been in the non-profit space for my whole career now, which has spanned 18 years. So, similar to Ramya, you might have to do the maths on that around my age, but I'm not going to let that one go easily. In terms of, let's just set some context though, really quickly. And I think many organizations are operating under some real pressure at the moment. We should take a moment just to really recognize that. Derek talked about some of those challenges around AI specifically, but let's just zoom out a tad. We're seeing tighter budgets, increasing demand for services, and more competition for funding. And at the same time, some of this donor behavior has changed and volunteering levels have softened. So let's just dive into that really quickly. For those of you who aren't aware, Charities Aid Foundation do an annual giving report, and I've taken some of the key metrics from that giving report and shared them here. So on the right-hand side, we can see that £14 billion was donated in 2025 to charities in the UK. However, that is down from 15.4 billion in 2024. So that is the first fall in giving since 2021. So that's showing a bit of a declining trend. In that middle stat there, which it talks about the number of donors. So, sorry, in the left-hand side, sorry. We've got only 55% of adults donate, and that's down from 69% in 2016. That's 6 million fewer donors giving into that economy. So that decline in that donor base is estimated to have cost charities or less funding being available by a sort of 12.4 million quid. Now, if you then take that kind of financial landscape and then think about volunteering is also declining. So with 5.6 million volunteers, down from 1.5 million year on year from the year before. So that gives you a flavor. We've got that kind of perfect storm of fewer donors, less people giving, and fewer volunteers. We have to look for more creative and innovative solutions to be able to think about how we're going to get out of that. And so I guess what this does for me personally is we start to get from a point where AI is not primarily a technology story. It starts to become about capacity. So how do we create more time for our people? How do we reduce that administrative burden? How do we help teams make better decisions faster? And how do we protect frontline energy for the work that matters the most? So within Alzheimer's Society in particular, those frontline facing resources are there to support people impacted by dementia. 1 in 3 people born today will be impacted by dementia in their lifetime. We know that that's a real critical service that we offer, but scaling that can be really difficult when it requires more money, more cost, more effort, etc. So this is where we're kind of looking at how can AI really help us increase our mission and effectiveness around that. So that's where I see that kind of why it matters for charities right now. If we just dive into this next slide, I really then wanted to talk about how leaders, and this is the way I'm thinking about it personally, how we can turn that AI into the impact. So if we think about like I've got 3 things here, but for me personally, I think AI succeeds when it stops becoming owned by IT. I think far too often some of these conversations, particularly around AI, are seen as tooling conversations, and they're being lost from being kind of an organizational initiative. So for me personally, we've made a real conscious effort to look at this from the basis of how can we make sure that we've got that exec sponsorship. And the moment we've seen this owned by executive team internally, it's definitely become more of an organizational transformation conversation. And that shift has been absolutely crucial from turning away from that tooling type of conversation that I talked about before. So taking it from that traditional technology project where it's just about tools, but into that organizational transformation. The second piece here is where we talk about reframing the investment. So for me personally, for too long now, charities have thought about, if we invest in AI, what mission activity are we going to have to stop funding to make that happen? And actually, I think we need to reframe that debate a little bit. So it's not about, if we were to spend £1 million on AI, it means we're not going to spend £1 million on research, for example, in context of Alzheimer's Society. What I like to think of it as is, how can we use AI to create efficiencies that will release more money for those same activities, so that it becomes a bit of a flywheel. So the more efficiency we can gain, the more money we'll be able to put into our frontline services, so that it becomes less about that conversation of spend. Actually, they can be complementary. And then the third is around capability. So Derek talked there about skilling and the investment that Microsoft are making, but organizations need to think about that skilling too. And the way that I've thought about this personally is around kind of leaders first, then looking at champions, and then looking at the wider organization. There probably is, many methodologies that you can take around this, but for me, when I think about that first point around making it mission led and making that exec ownership, if we can help our leaders become really fluent and open about talking about this stuff and really confident when they're talking about it, it makes it a lot easier to allow that to settle in the organization. Likewise, champions networks can be really helpful. I've done this in a previous role, and then likewise here in Alzheimer's Society, we're setting up a champions network to be able to really start to become that kind of, I guess, that ability to scale in the organization. So we can do that centrally from a technology training team, for example, around that capability. But actually, we're thinking about it in that sense of, let's train the trainer, let's have those people that are business experts within those wider teams be able to go out and talk to their colleagues about how they can really leverage the technology. And then wider than that, obviously, you've got the organization. I think one thing that's really interesting is thinking about all the different levels of fluency around this stuff. So, for example, you might have some people that in their outside of work life, that they maybe are using ChatGPT, they might be using Claude, and they might be using these technologies to help run their life. I know individuals who aren't in the technology space that are using these tools day in, day out. But then you've also got people on the other end of that kind of barometer that are maybe not using the technologies at all, maybe a bit fearful of it, and everybody in between. So those different ranges of skills and expertise and kind of understanding of AI will be in place across our whole organization. And it's really important that we can meet those people where they're at, to be able to support them with the skills that they need to be fluent and able to use the tools to the best of their capabilities. Because obviously, when organizations are making that investment, they want to make sure we're getting the return as well. And obviously, measuring that is really important. And then there's a little bit of a provocative sort of note along the bottom there, but this is just a personal opinion. I believe that AI it won't replace charities, quite clearly, but charities that use AI will outperform those that don't. So if you think about those stats that I shared on the prior slide, where that giving economy is getting more and more tight and more difficult to transact in, it's going to be really important that organizations are a lot more meaningful about the asks they make, how they go out to their beneficiaries, what the asks are at the right time. And it will be those charities that are leveraging those tools that will really be able to make the best of that. That's just a prediction. I might not be correct, but that's just the way it feels from my perspective. And at this point, sorry, Josh.
No, I think that's brilliant. And just on the Charities Aid Foundation slide as well. I mean, we saw that, I don't know how long ago, maybe 6 to 12 months ago, when Donald Trump's kind of mandate was to kind of give up the USAID funding, and specifically with large charities, they were hit hard by that. And it was a case of, right, okay, where can we save costs? But ultimately, if we can create that efficient engine, then we really should be ready for times like that. So obviously, this is kind of forcing the change for a lot of charities. But the AI transformation that we're kind of going through at the minute shows that we can accelerate quickly as well, which is obviously the exciting piece. And I think what's unique about yourself, Aidan, and I think where everybody wants to be really is, the conversations that you and I have are rarely about individual productivity gains. They're always about the fact that, 1 in 10 people die from dementia at the minute. 46% of dementia is kind of preventable. And you mentioned the kind of 1 in 3 people born today will develop dementia. Like, that's all the stuff that we're looking to impact. And so I think that's why you and I get super excited about the work that we're delivering here together, because it's blue sky thinking. It's looking at the large complex processes that we can automate, and the personal productivity will come as well. But I think that's been tried and tested. We've got an approach for Copilot now. It's the case of, let's also start looking at the mission impact led activity that we're doing together as well. So it's really cool. Sorry to put you on the spot, and feel free for anyone to pop questions in the chat as well, to also put the guys a little bit on the spot. But your role as a CTO in the industry, you mentioned that you've been doing this for kind of 18 years now. Is there anything different at the moment in terms of AI transformation to anything that you've seen previously in terms of just standard kind of digital transformation, and anything that you're kind of feeling about your role that is maybe a little bit different to what it would have been 3, 4, 5 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. It's a really interesting question. I think if we think about some of these previous digital transformation waves, the CTO was often kind of centered around, I don't know, like systems modernization, cloud migration, cybersecurity, data platforms, that kind of thing. And it was all important work, but it was all largely centered around kind of technology delivery, if you like. And but AI feels very different because of how it cuts across the organization. One of the things that you and I have discussed, Josh, before is the fact that with some of these activities, maybe before it was about me as a CTO or a leader in technology going out to the organization, trying to sell the benefit, talking about what the benefit might be to the organization, those different areas of the organization as well. What are they going to get from this particular technology implementation? AI split that's on its head a little bit. People are coming to technology and they're talking about, I do this in the outside world, I've seen this, I really want it. And that isn't just coming from senior people. It's not just coming from our board of trustees. That's coming from staff across the organization in all sorts of different altitudes in terms of their roles and the way they look at their work. So that's created a completely unique challenge. And what I'd say is it takes the role of the CTO or the leader within technology away from being the technology owner, but more about enterprise enablement. So we're not just kind of thinking about how the technology does the work. It's actually turns more into about business transformation. So I think actually it's seeing the role of the modern CTO, if you like, shifting away from being that technology leader more to kind of business transformation leader. And I think it's probably one of the most exciting times. There's probably, I imagine there's probably an argument to say that every 5 years is these sort of cycles and there's always an exciting time. But for me personally, and obviously you and I have lots of conversations on this, Josh, I think this is genuinely exciting time when organizations can really start to look at their mission and how they can turn that kind of productivity and those kind of gains into that mission impact. Super exciting.
No, that's perfect. It's a good segue. So obviously, as you'd expect, we've got a formula to go and deliver this change. So Ramya, it's a good time for you to kind of take over the screen and walk people through that.
Sure, thank you. Just grab that through. We've seen quite a lot of clients start doing defragmented, simple POCs or POVs with no plan for literally going that firm-wide articulation of AI projects, right? Which is why we came up with this holistic approach called AI Factory. What this does is we're not starting with a proof of concept or a particular use case, but thinking about AI as a holistic approach. What that means is we've divided it into 3 components. The first one is to kind of understand not leveraging AI just for a particular use case, but to think about how can we leverage AI from an organization perspective, understand the strategies or strategic view, or become that strategic partner with our organizations, going through the journey of what's the yearly objectives, what is that 3, 6, and 9 monthly objectives of the company, and then see how AI can be leveraged, right? So if you think about it, it's a inverted funnel. You have loads and loads of ideas within the functional areas of the organization. And that's where we see a lot of strengths coming in to understand that envisioning session with our clients. What that means is from that ideation piece of 20, 30 use cases identified, then putting that prioritization matrix of understanding the business impact and what is the ROI and the time and effort considered. So with that, you come down to the top 5, top 10 priorities for each functional areas. That's typically preparing for AI, right? You've understood your functional, frictional, mundane, manual tasks and how that can be leveraged. And then moving on to preparation. A lot of people say it's a boring topic, but I can't recommend enough that this is very important, that before you start that journey of AI, going down the rabbit hole and then thinking about, oh, we need to come back and revisit our architecture, or this landing zone is not good enough for sustainable AI, or we haven't thought about security and the guardrails. So the component 2 literally is about preparing the right AI landing zone with security, governance, and AI is a big black hole if a good data architecture is not backed up for any AI solution for that matter. So having that architecture or foundational architecture well landed in place, then move on to the component 3, which basically, I always say, don't boil the ocean, start small, fail quick, learn quick. Start with a high priority use case, which can be really small, but does that high impact across that firm, right? Then prove the value and the ROI, get stakeholders buy-in, and then move into churning those use cases that we have already identified in component 1. Now, with this approach, we not only think about initialization, experimenting, but also making sure that scaling from POV to deployment is nice and smooth, and all the architecture and the guardrails are in place. You also see a big line there called as responsible AI. What that means is it's a bigger topic, of course. It's about that ethical behavior. How are people educated and skilled in terms of how the right usage of AI, who's accountable, who's responsible, is the data that AI is using for giving the output grounded and approved. All that encompasses the right solution, not just for the POV, but for a good firm level deployments. So that's our scaling of component 1, 2, and 3 coming together. And as a part of that, what I would like to also go into and present here is that component 1 extension. We also provide the AI readiness assessment. What that means is where most of our clients come through different maturity levels, right? So it could be somebody who's experimenting, somebody who's already proficient, but understanding that industry level pointers and putting a remediation, which is what we call it as readiness assessment. And whether we touch base on the buy area or the build area, this is a lot of topic around build versus buy, where should we start and things like that. The theory is simple, right? Well, I say simple. When you're thinking about that self-enablement, supporting your day-to-day activities and almost becoming your personal assistant is your buy area. In Microsoft world, that will be a Copilot or M365 Copilot enablement. And then when it comes to that, moving a step ahead from that personal enablement to a departmental enablement, or writing agents or doing a semi-autonomous agents within the department or functional area, that's an extension piece within Copilot, but it's an agent builder in Copilot Studio. Now, if you think about it, these two are SaaS products, and you may hit limitations in terms of volume of data or high level of control on the data that's being used, or you want to have a lot more customization in your front end or an app. Then that goes the build arena, which basically is talking about the build from scratch, your own USP on enterprise level solution using AI within the Foundry. That's the build arena. I just want to put another slide in front of you before I finish my talk. This is an industry specific. Microsoft done quite quite a lot of these research into this, right? So what that means is they have identified the top business processes based on the impact and how AI could be leveraged across those department level. If I take, I don't know, customer services, which is a prevalent one, and automation in support alignment, problem resolution, or semi-autonomous continuous improvement plan, or even simple self-help governing to data and self-support systems using chatbots. We'll be sharing this deck with you after this call as well, so to give you an example of what kind of use cases prevalently there per operational level. I think that's the end of my talk, Josh.
That's perfect. You've all been very good at keeping on time today, so I appreciate that. And there's actually, yeah, obviously there's some questions coming in the chat as well, so I really appreciate that. If we move on to the next section around governance and compliance, and then just around the question that will come back to you afterwards for that. So if you just run through really how we've looked at, obviously what we're doing for Alzheimer's Society is quite ambitious around AI, but there's a governance and compliance risk. How are we kind of approaching that for the society?
There is. So one of the key takeaways that I think we all need to look at is, while it's amazing to adopt all of these new technologies and services, we have to do it in a responsible manner. We are all under control for governance organizations. We have legal and financial responsibility to manage and control our data and services that we provide, and that's done as a trifecta service. We have the tools available. Microsoft provide a lot of those tools for us, and they're very good. We build the processes in conjunction with the people that work both with us and with those services that we use third parties to build that governance framework. The key takeaway from that is that we look to provide confidence to the business. So in adopting these services, so while we can see the benefit, it's can we mitigate the risk in the adoption of those services. So we're looking to use the capabilities that are available to us, such as Defender for Cloud apps, Microsoft Purview, the Entra suite of services that will allow us to mitigate the risk of the adoption, as well as things like SharePoint Advanced Management, which we can start looking for. Where is our data? What is it being used for? Who has access to it? Do we have an oversharing risk? Do we have shadow AI services? I saw there was a question in the piece there around shadow AI services. So at the moment there are over 1,000 Gen AI services provided to us, and how do we control those as an organization? Using those tools and processes is going to be key to mitigating that risk. As far as the adoption and streamlining of capability from that foundational element through to an enterprise solution, at each way we layer on additional controls as required without causing additional operational overhead to organizations. So it's key to understand that those are adopted in a relevant manner. And yeah, the key takeaway I would like to say is that the adoption of those security controls are meant to support the adoption of these services, not as a blocker. We see a lot of organizations will typically, they're very keen to understand and adopt AI services as a proof of concept, and then they stagnate when it comes to migrating to scale. Typically because they get scared that they're either oversharing or under securing their systems and services.
That's perfect, Nick. And if we want to just move on to the next slide quickly, I can take control.
Yep.
So we'll answer obviously questions in a second, so I'll be coming back to you in 1 second. I think the components that Ramya and Nick have just walked through as a call to action, really, from our perspective, we would encourage you all to start with either component 1 and or 2. So Alzheimer's and Aidan's experience was kind of, look, we need to actually approach this and accelerate this. So we looked at the strategy at the same time as the readiness, but either or is good with us. The security piece that Nick just covered, that would be effectively an element of component 2 that we would start with a discovery exercise around. But a lot of our time at the minute is spent around building an AI strategy for organizations. And then afterwards, that would then look at basically a proposal to move into that AI factory motion. So happy to talk to you about that in more detail. Just moving to questions, and feel free to pop any more in the chat if you've got them. Nick, starting with you, Paul has posted the question that should we be suggesting technical restrictions for AI tools that we are not suggesting users should use, e.g. they have a policy that suggests they use Copilot and Jira, but they don't actually block via websites and apps like ChatGPT or Context AI. And Paul's thoughts on this are that it's a big security risk, even though their users are trained on how to use AI. So if you want to just answer that component of the question, please.
Yeah, so that covers off the whole piece around shadow AI. So where you have these additional services, if you're using Defender as your primary XDR capability, as part of the extension of Defender for Cloud Apps, we can restrict to either a subset of users or blanket organizational controls the adoption of some of those services. Typically, we found we would unsanction some of those that we consider a high security risk, where we have a business case for adopting new services, so like Jira, if it's applicable to your business. We would put that in a monitoring state initially and then look to do a phased rollout to the organization as part of that adoption. Where we're doing development in-house, as Ramya described in terms of the Copilot Studio, we have controls in place to publish to a subset of users and then to a wider adoption piece for the organization. So there are granular controls on both of those. Yeah.
That's great. Hopefully that answers your question, Paul. And anywhere you can see a suggested draft AI policy, we'd be happy to share our draft with you to be used as inspiration. So we'll take an action to follow up with you on that one.
Yeah, big disclaimer there as well. We're not a legally advisory services so what we share is our AI policy for our professional services organization. So of course you guys are the industry experts in your area, but you can definitely use what we share as a reference point.
100%. Aidan, coming to you for Martha's question. So you've been at the Alzheimer's Society for the past year, and obviously the team have not had Copilot licenses, so it's quite probably unique to you as well. So how to bridge the technical divide within the organization when AI agents are not available to everyone. So what have you been up to satisfy everyone over the past year?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. It's quite an important point, because you start to get to a point where you could end up creating like an equity issue in terms of if you have unequal access to those AI tools, it could quickly create like a bit of a two-speed organization if we don't manage that kind of well. I think what's also really important to note is the shadow AI piece, which was mentioned earlier. That will be happening. So even if you think it isn't, for example, I'm just going to share really openly here. One of my biggest concerns when I joined the organization was that everybody talked to me about the fact that we're not ready for Copilot, we're not ready for AI because we haven't got those governance pieces in place. And I fully accept that. And obviously we're now working through that with yourselves at Transparency, which is brilliant. However, my biggest risk or concern around that was the fact that I could guarantee that just because we wasn't putting those things in place and being able to make that available, the more risky thing would be happening, which would be people would be putting our data in those third-party tools without us knowing. And actually that creates more of a risk than potentially a bit of overexposure. So it's a very tricky balance to hold. But I think if we come back to that point around kind of where you haven't got tools available, I'd be thinking about, so we did have a small amount of licenses, and obviously there was a risk to allowing those because we didn't have some of that governance put in place. But what we were able to do is kind of think about some of those roles where the role value and not a hierarchical thing. So we didn't just go and roll all those licenses out that we did have, for example, to our most senior people in the organization. It was about, let's try to give maybe one team member in each area to see a bit of role, what the value could be driven from that. We've also thought about like some of the skills elements. So just because there isn't licenses to share, it didn't mean that we couldn't talk about some of the literacy piece and be able to start talking about the things. So, for example, Copilot Chat is available to all. I think there is maybe a change coming up from Microsoft. I'm not fully across it, but that might not be available in every application moving forward for all organizations. But I'm not an expert in that space, so I won't get into that. But I think what's really important is you can still show how people can be using some of the tools, the free tools in particular, to make the most of that. That starts to build up that AI literacy for a start. So there's obviously, you don't have to necessarily have a paid license in order to do that. And then we've also had a lot of internal sharing. So where we've created shared value or kind of those use cases, we've been able to sort of help in a small way, kind of share some of that around the organization. One, to whet the appetite a little bit of people who maybe haven't got access to that at the moment, but also to sort of build up that kind of understanding of what capability that might bring to the organization. I think the biggest risk we need to avoid in this particular instance is avoid creating like an AI elite within your organization. The people that are kind of you always give the licenses to, they're the people that have all the access to all the tools. They'll be running away with it. You then leave a lot of people behind. And I think it's that clear communication. So be really clear on your rollout about what the roadmap is, who's going to get it, when, what the benefit will look like, and obviously just framing it in the correct way so that it doesn't feel like it's an unequal access sort of issue either. So I guess that'd be my main thinking around that one, Josh.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Perfect. And Nick, we've got another one for you here. So the AI assessment that you spoke about earlier, is that EU AI Act compliant? And also, can the Purview suite build robust AI inventory and management for multiple upcoming regulatory compliance requirements? There's a tongue twister, but there you go.
Yeah. So yes to both. So in terms of the compliance piece, you've got a number of templates already created by Microsoft specifically around the EU AI Act. There's also ISO 42001 and 23894, which is the AI management systems, as well as the NIST AI management framework that's still being ratified out. In terms of the inventory and management, you've got DSPM for AI, or as it's going to be the part of the newly developed data security posture management within Purview. So that is giving you full auditability and accountability of all actions for both users of AI services as well as AI agents natively themselves. There's a couple of pieces that are currently in preview that I'm not sure if I can talk about, but are very warmly being received at the moment around a more senior and executive summary of the AI security posture within your organization that are very much being on the horizon and due for release fairly soon.
That's perfect. Well, I can't see any more questions in the chat. So following this, if you're already working with Transparency, then continue to work with the same team, which would be my colleague Abby and other colleagues in the team. If you're new to Transparency and you want to explore working with us a little bit further, our team will reach out to you for a follow-up call. And I just want to leave everyone just with one final note from the team, really. So I guess, Aidan, starting with you. You're a CTO leading Alzheimer's Society through this AI wave. What advice would you give to current or aspiring CTOs about to deliver the same change?
Yeah, so cracking question. I think my thought processes on this one, don't take it on alone. Like, I talked earlier about getting that exec buy-in and sponsorship. I'd imagine most organizations have got some appetite to kind of move forward with this. You'll probably be, if you're in that kind of role, you'll be hearing a lot from the organization about their desire to move forward with this stuff. So, I mean, two pieces of advice that I'd give personally would be around the fact that think about dedicated roles for doing that. And when I talked earlier about it being in technology and not being a technology thing, just want to really call out something. We've hired an AI lead, head of AI in our organization, and that's somebody that's not sitting in the technology function. They sit outside of that, and I really wholeheartedly believe that's a super thing to do, because for us that allows them to have that kind of horizontal view of the organization, and they're helping create that value for people, but with a really close connection into technology. So I'm meeting with this individual very regularly, and we're talking about that, what that looks like. And obviously, Josh, as you'll be aware from our kind of interactions as well, that's helping because, of course, it allows more dedicated time and resources to be able to support the delivery of that, rather than it sitting in amongst lots of other things within kind of that technology or portfolio stack, if you like, that we have to deliver. And I think the only other thing, and people might think this is a little bit cheesy in the fact that I'm saying this on a transparency webinar, I would really encourage people to go and think about engaging with a partner. And personally, I could think of nobody better than Transparency for this, but you might say I would say that. However, it's because we don't have all the skills and expertise within our own organizations a lot of the time. You know, for example, that's the exact reason why we've used that kind of AI factory and that approach that's been discussed today with Transparency, because we knew we couldn't implement all of that stuff ourselves. And having that dedicated approach to follow has been absolutely invaluable for us to drive this journey along quicker, more efficiently and faster. And the investment has been, you know, worth its weight in gold in terms of the ability for us to enact and transact that quicker. The organization was in a place that it wasn't able to start rolling out Copilot. We will be in a position, fingers crossed, that by the summer, potentially everybody in the society will have access to a Copilot license. Now, if you told our organization that maybe 6 months ago, they would not have believed it. And that's through this partnership with Transparency and Microsoft. So I just wanted to kind of give those two pieces of advice, I think.
Appreciate it, and I promise everyone I did not pay him to say that, so thank you. But thank you very much. Rami, just coming to you quickly, in terms of the successful AI implementations that you've seen, I guess, is there one piece of practical advice that we could leave everyone with, which would distinguish from the successful from the not successful projects that you've seen so far?
Yeah, sure. I think I actually can come up with lots and lots of examples here, but I will try not to. I think the biggest reason for scaling, almost like a small proof of values, to thinking about that large firm-wise discussions, it's not really technology. There are two issues that I've noticed so far, is that clear adoption to change being delivered, and also that operator discipline. Usually, if you start AI projects, it's narrow focused and everybody is excited. But as you scale up, they lose that operator discipline. And the best way to kind of conquer this is like three things. Number one is to treat AI not as a tool, but as a workflow. Aidan mentioned about that workflow assistance and talking about mundane tasks being autonomous, but just keep improving on that workflow. The next one is obviously, we spoke about skill sets, right? There'll be different people at different levels, bringing that skill set, that level of behavioral change and adoption management across the board. And the third thing is great, all of this investment that's going into AI. And the main idea is bringing this productivity higher and change and you know, making that capacity available. If all of those are saved, how can this value be explicitly converted in monetary? So having the right metrics to track the capacity, I think, keeps that investments coming, and also leveraging AI continuously. Hopefully that's helped.
Massively. And finishing with yourself, Derek, how can people work more closely with Microsoft Elevate? And maybe for the smaller charities that are on the call as well, any advice in terms of how they can potentially work together a little bit more closely?
Yeah, great question. I think one of my own observations from working in the nonprofit space, in particular, versus any other industry that or vertical that you might come across, is that it's a lot more collaborative as a community. We don't necessarily look at technology adoption as driving a competitive edge. We're not competing with each other, as you might potentially see in other parts of the commercial industry and so forth. That's why the Changemakers program resonates quite well with me. Obviously, we've got the accreditation side of things, which is, you know, addressing the skilling piece, looking about creating, you know, champions within those organizations. But there's a community aspect to it as well. It's about creating those connections across multiple different organizations so that we can do ideation, we can do exchange of information, policies, you know, share best practices and understand what's working, what isn't working. I think one of the interesting things that Aidan pointed out earlier on is the change that's actually happening with regards to how people are thinking about adopting AI and the way in which they're measuring the return as well. It nearly feels like there's a change in the way in which IT is being perceived within organizations as well. So we're moving away from potentially being cost-based or cost-centric to being more of a center of innovation and an ability to drive sort of transformation at an organizational level. So I suppose, there's a few things I would say. One, engage with the Changemakers program. We're really going to try and put a lot of investment, a lot of time and focus on this over the next while, both in terms of the accreditations piece, driving the community side of things and creating that momentum. But on top of that, there's going to be live and on-demand training around capacity building as well within the industry, because we're conscious about what this looks like over the next couple of years. We're expecting adoption to ramp up to about 30% of the industry within the next 2 years, which is significant when you think about the number of organizations that we're already serving today. So reach out directly, reach out to partners such as Transparency as well. I can't emphasize enough what Aidan's already called out. Working with the partners is going to be key to this. But yeah, we'll continue to release programs over the next while as well. So feel free to reach out directly if you want any further information on that.
That's brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Derek, as well, for your support of us as a partner. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Aidan, as well, for obviously being a customer, but your thought leadership in the sector. I think everyone probably already knows you and recognises you from doing these things lots of times before and sharing your kind of experience and insights. So we appreciate it. And thank you, Ramia and Nick, for the work that you're doing as well and for joining us on the webinar today. Simon, I love the comment around we didn't choose AI chose us. I fully agree, but super exciting time from my perspective anyway. I mean, if you think about the mission and the impact that we're all going to be driving together over the next 5-10 years, it's I just find it so exciting. So hopefully you do too. Hopefully that was super valuable for everyone, and we'll pop the slides round to you all afterwards, as well as the Microsoft Frontier playbook, and happy to answer any questions offline. Thank you, everyone.